Okay, hello everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and the first thing I'm going to ask, because I'm in a unique location right now, I'm sitting between two twin beds in a beach house. So I had to make a little studio up here, and I have my mic here, but I want to make sure you can actually hear me because it's my mic is sitting on a bed instead of on a table next to me. You can see and hear me. Am I really quiet, like you want to stress out trying to hear me, or is it clear and loud and all that kind of stuff? Loud enough? I just want to make sure. Cool. All right, then I'm in luck. Because if you saw what I'm doing here, you'd laugh. And if all of a sudden my curtain rod breaks behind me and all of a sudden the green screen falls, you will see the you'll see the window going in, I think, to a parking lot, but I'm at the beach. So there we go. Hello, everybody. There's Ann here, Ann Haley, Ann Liebman. Okay, we got Lisa's here. Both Lisas are here. Carolina is here. And Martin's here. So Martin says he's not going to give us any trouble during the show, but, I like it when he gives me trouble. And Carrie's here. Doreen is here. Joe is here. Oh, fantastic. This is Molly's here. Let's see who else is here. Before I continue on here, I think I've got everybody. Kay is here. And if I didn't get you, all right. Sorry. Anyway, so what are we doing today? This is going to be a very different kind of show today. I have a wonderful guest with me today, Corey Smith, and I'll introduce him in just a second. But before I do, if you're here for the first time, please do like and subscribe. It helps the channel keep afloat. And if you'd like to participate in the chat room on the live shows, I have 3 different type of live shows. The 6 shows a month that are on the different crimes. I also have a hangout every week, which is live. And now we have 2 times a month, which is a call-in live. And all you have to do is go to Patreon below, click on that, select a level that you want to participate in. And not only do you have more fun, but you support the channel. And believe me, I'm going to be probably demonetized on this one too. I was demonetized on my last one I did on Sunday, so there you go. Always happens. It's very frustrating. So suddenly they say, "Oh, your stuff is not appropriate for most people." Like, who's it not appropriate for? I don't show crime scene stuff, and I don't swear usually. And I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, so we're going to do a special show today, and Red Rum is here too, and Gretchen's here. Wow, we've got a great crowd. Okay, so let me explain this show. I did another show. If you haven't seen it yet, you can go check on it. It is the original show I did on Dennis Rader and BTK, Dennis Rader and BTK. And the question is, was he the original BTK? Because Dennis Rader confessed to 10 crimes, which included the first 2 crimes that they attributed at some point to BTK, which were the Otero Homicides, which were 4 in a family who were murdered, and then the Catherine Bright crime. She was murdered and her brother was shot. Those were the first 5. Then it's like a 3-year down period, and then there were another 5. Well, it was clear that he was definitely the guy that killed the last 5. The question is, did he kill the first 5? And what happened is, I worked on this case. I went out to Wichita. It was in 2004, and I had an excellent suspect. And it was actually one of the top suspects that the original BTK investigator, detective on the case, also believed might be BTK. He, the first 2 crimes, 2 of the women that were murdered, Mrs. Otero in the first crime and Catherine Bright in the second crime, they both worked for the Coleman Company. So did this suspect. And he was also not at work that day at the Coleman Company. So there was a lot riding on the fact that this might be the guy. Now, never saying it was the guy, but this, because when you're doing any kind of investigation, you just have to keep your avenues open of investigation, not get too locked into tunnel vision, but also, be aware that there might be more than one possibility. So anyway, I was there in Wichita, talked with this detective. My suspect was a great suspect. And I learned a lot of things while I was there. One of the things I learned while I was there, according to what I had read and what I had learned, was that the BTK, the DNA from the Otero homicide was too degraded to be used. And we'll discuss that in a little bit. And so I pretty much, was confident that there was no DNA from the Otero crime, the 4 people that were murdered in the home, the family. And then one day, Dennis Rader had been caught, and he went to well, he didn't go to trial. He went to court and confessed to all 10 murders, and it was claimed that he had committed the Otero crime and had also been linked to these murders properly through DNA. And I'm like, huh? What? Because as far as I know, there is no DNA in the Otero crime that can be used. And also, the Bright crime never had any DNA ever, so how's he linked to that? So after this happened, I wrote a commentary and talked with the prosecutor very shortly, Fulston, I can't pronounce her name, and she just snippily came back and said, no, well, yes, everything is everything was done properly. No, of course, that's correct. But she never. I asked about the fact about the Otero DNA, and she never came back and said anything about the Otero DNA. So I was still going, where's the proof of this? And I'll explain what we learned along the way and how it all went out. But so we'll get back. We're going to go back to the beginning in a minute. But that's where I did the show. Like, hey, I'm not saying he's not the original BTK, but 5 people were killed in 2 crimes, 3 years downtime, and then these letters came in from this guy, clearly from this guy, and he was connected by DNA to 2 of the crimes that were later. So no question, serial killer, no question. The last 5 crimes, no question. But did he commit the first 2 crimes? So I did my video on that, and pretty confident because I'd done my research and stuff, and so as far as I knew, there wasn't proof of the Otero DNA. And then I get an email after the show from a very wonderful human being by the name of Corey Smith. Hey, Corey, are you there?
I'm here. Hello, Pat.
Hi, Corey. So anyway, Corey wrote me this thing and said, hey, I found a document that says there was actually proof of DNA. And I'm like, okay, can you see if you're looking at the camera right now, can you see my face? I'm like, say what? I have to appreciate that Corey was very, very kind. Weren't you, Corey? You're very nice and polite to me. Because a lot of times I get emails like that and they'll go like, I found the information. You're an idiot. Corey did not do that. So thank you, Corey. I appreciate that. Very polite. But he, gave this information. I'm like, wow, that's absolutely fascinating. But I'm like, why didn't I know about this? Why did I never hear about this? Let me show you what the summary of evidence is, so you can see what Corey linked me to. So let me find it here. Okay, again, I apologize. People say, why don't you have these things better put together? It's because they're so small you can't see them, and that is the problem. So sometimes I have to. Okay. Here, this is the link, and if you look up atop, it says serialkillersinfo.com. That's where you found it, right, Corey?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, let me just explain what it is, and then I want you to explain how you found it, because I feel like an idiot. I never found it. Anyway, this is a thing called the State Summary of the Evidence. And it says, right, if you look at the date on it, it says August 18th, 2005. And there it is. And I will show you what's included in a little later. And it is signed. It is signed by these four people, including the district attorney, Nola Falston, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, Falston. Oddly, nobody put the date on it. I thought that was really kind of funny, because whenever I sign something, there's always a date I have to sign next to it. I thought that was weird. But anyway, but clearly this was filed on this particular day. Now what happened was Rader had already gone to court. And here he is, the BTK confession. This is what a lot of people saw. After they did this big press conference, like, hey, we arrested BTK, he doesn't actually get put on trial. He goes to court and he just sits there and confesses to 10 murders and says creepy things about all of the 10 people he killed. And I mean, he's so creepy, it's hard to look away and say, oh, is there any question here? Of course not. You're like, the dude was there. He did these things. And so he did that, and then afterwards there was a then they let's see let me see when it said it happened here. So he did his confession, and then where'd it go? I thought it was here. Hold on a second. No, I've lost it. Darn it! I hate it when I do that. Anyway, then he got convicted and sentenced, and this summary of evidence came in. Supposedly, at the time he was sentenced, that's when the summary of evidence was filed, I guess. The weird thing is, and I'm going to go over this, I never heard about it, and a lot of other people don't seem to have heard about it either, which is so odd, because usually it's like available right away. It's like, oh, here's the evidence, or they would have presented a lot of this in court, but I didn't see any of that, and that's why I never knew about it. I'm like, if this is what you had, why wouldn't you brag about it? Why wouldn't you shout it to the hilltops? Hey, we know we did the DNA, and it matched him. The Otero crime scene matched him, no question. But it was like, they didn't actually mention this in court. And there was actually, the one thing they did mention in court, I gotta try to find it now. Was it here? Okay, hold on a second. I'm gonna flip through a whole bunch of crap because I can't find it. Oh yeah, all right. Previous police statements said that Rader's DNA matched DNA from at least one BTK crime scene. One, which is kind of odd. I do believe that's the Fox one. Would you agree with me, Corey? That's the Fox one was like the first one that like really had DNA.
That's what I'm thinking. I can't find a very direct reference to that, but that's what I'm thinking based on what I've read.
Yeah, there's not a really good direct reference either. But I think that was the first one that actually got really good. They got it from her clothing, and it had seemingly enough, and that was what I think locked in, that they believed Fox was a BTK, and therefore everything else, centered around that. But that was the original, I believe, as well. At the trial, Lieutenant Landwehr, and he was the major investigator after my guy. I'm not going to mention his name just because he thought my suspect was the guy too, and I just don't want to, screw him over in case, both completely wrong on this idea. I don't want to put his name out there. Anyway, Lieutenant Landwehr stated that Rader's DNA matched the DNA from 2 of the crime scenes. Okay, I'm having problems here, Corey. What do you see my problem is?
Why not 3 of the crime scenes?
Yeah, that's my problem. I mean,
right.
Supposedly, at this point, by the time they went to trial, they had the Fox crime scene, the Wagerly crime scene, and the Otero crime scene. But Landwehr only says 2 of the crime scenes, and he doesn't state which 2 those are, which 2 they were. I do not understand that. And so It's really a bizarre thing. I'm like, what? So let me go. We're going to go back to the beginning, but I want to ask you, first of all, how did you find this link? Because I put in, God knows before I did the show, because I try not to be an idiot, do a whole show and then somebody comes out like you and says, but Pat, and I'm like, I had put in Otero, DNA, BTK, Dennis Rader. I put in lots and lots of search engines. Now I did come up with what I will share with everybody in a little bit. Things that were said in books, but that were very vague. So, yeah, you can say things in books. You can say, oh, there was DNA, but, by the time something goes to trial or a person gets convicted and sentenced, you would think if they actually had 100% DNA, again, shout it from the rooftops, here's the forensic reports. And I put all this crap in, and I never came up with anything but, people's, opinions from different books. How did you come across this? Because it's just, I'm like, I never saw it. And to this day, when I put in the same thing, I still don't come up with the serialkillersinfo.com site. How did you end up there?
Well, first of all, it's really not that easy to find. But
interesting.
After I watched your...
By the way, I didn't pay him to say that, so I don't look like total idiot.
No, she didn't pay me to say anything, so let's make that clear.
Thank you, Corey.
Which is fine with me. So after I watched your first BTK video, I've been following the BTK thing for quite a while, and I had never heard anyone say what you were saying, which was, you were kind of proposing the idea that maybe, pretty much what you just said, maybe Dennis Rader wasn't necessarily the first, the original BTK. So that made me really question all of my assumptions about Dennis Rader and BTK. So I just wanted to go on the internet
Right.
and find a list of all physical evidence that they found at every crime scene and all physical evidence that they found at Dennis Rader's house.
This guy's good.
So
I'm telling you guys, he's really good.
Oh, thank you.
I'm totally impressed.
I mean, just for my own personal satisfaction, just for my own knowledge, my own
Right.
curiosity. So I started typing whatever you would expect into Google, and because
Right.
the internet is this giant cesspool of just garbage, it was really hard to just find a list of evidence.
Right.
But at some point, I wish I could remember exactly what I typed in, but I came across that site that you linked to,
Wow.
which contained the state summary of evidence, and it's available on a few other sites as well, but that's where I saw it. And it's just this 92-page document submitted to the court.
Right.
And I mean, I guess it was, I just learned like 30 minutes before the show started that it was filed the day that Dennis Rader was sentenced.
Well,
yeah, the same day.
And this is really, first of all, it's odd. You'd think it would be actually submitted earlier.
Right.
Before,
exactly.
like, as a probable cause type of thing. Not after you've already determined that he's guilty.
Or if it's going to be part of the sentencing, then here's how we know all the horrible things he did, and you should take that into consideration as you're going to sentence him.
Right. I find that very strange. And the other thing I just can't understand is that you found this. I went back to the serialkillersinfo.com, which I believe is exactly where it is. And as far as I know, they posted that in 2018. And let's go back to what was the date that it was actually filed was, hold on a second.
August 2005.
August 2005. Okay, yeah, here.
August 18th.
No, that's not what I want. Yeah, August 2005. So the serialkillers.info.com site has it at 2018. I did write them and asked, did they, where did they get their information? I never got an answer. And then you said there were some other sites that had it earlier. Did you find that?
Well, sort of. I found a message board where people were talking about Dennis Rader as the court proceeding was going on after he had just been arrested, and talking about what all the rumors were. And somebody on that message board, obviously after August 2005, but it was like in 2006 or something, somebody posted a message that said, hey, there's a 92-page PDF document called State Summary of the Evidence that you guys should check out. It has a lot of details in it and stuff. I didn't see it linked there, but I saw someone mention it.
Somebody mentioned, was it Reddit? Were you on Reddit?
It wasn't Reddit. It was some old message board that nobody uses anymore. I don't remember what it was.
Well, Reddit is interesting because the show I just did last Sunday, sorry, 2 Sundays ago on Julie, I forgot her last name, right? Is that right? Yeah, Julie Red, and whether she killed her son. I really wanted to read the original transcript from the first trial, and I did the same thing I did with this. I'm like putting in everything, first trial transcript, blah blah blah. Never came up with crap, but somehow at some point it ended up on Reddit on some discussion, and somebody said, "Oh, here's the first trial," and they linked it. And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And I went there. Lo and behold, it was the entire trial transcript, and that changed my viewpoint on the entire case, because I could actually read the transcript from the trial, and it was amazing. I'm like, "Well, why is this? What? I could only find it through somebody's comment on Reddit, and it was just luck, and very frustrating." So yeah, I read that you said it was like maybe someplace earlier, but 2018, you found the one on 2018, correct? That's the one you...
That's right.
Okay.
That's the one that came up when I searched for it.
Right. So we're talking about 13 years from 2005. And when I searched for it, still don't know how the heck you found it, but I didn't find it. And for a decade and a half, I've never seen that summary of evidence, which I'm like, why is that not just put out there? I mean, to me, when you're talking about cases and you want to have people have confidence in law enforcement and confidence in the justice system, what you want is to see evidence, and you want it to be laid out. You don't want to have to guess it and wonder what's true and what isn't true. which happens a lot, and that frustrates the heck out of me. So I'm like, I looked for this, I worked on this case, and until you brought this up, I never ever heard that they got DNA from the Otero scene. Never heard of it.
Right.
Now, so I'm going to take everybody back now to the beginning, and I'm going to show the major book. This is the major book. It's called Nightmare in Wichita. The author is Robert Beattie. By the way, Corey, I did email, or actually I had to tweet him because I sent him a message to ask about this issue, and he did not respond.
Okay.
So, I never know whether people don't respond because they don't pay attention, or because they don't want to admit things, or they don't like me. I have no idea. So, but was at the time. Let me explain who he was. Robert Beattie says here, and I think this is really important because I've worked with cases, and there are things that you don't bring out to the public, and there are things that you do, and there's reasons you don't, and there's reasons you do. And I'm having problems in this case because I don't understand the reasons they didn't, if it was true. Okay. So anyway, lawyer Robert Beattie assisted the police. Assisted. Of course, it could have been written by his, publisher. Let's be fair, it could be live. Assisted, because I have publishers and I don't trust them. But actually, what I'll say is this is true. When you get the back of a book published like this, and it gives information, or you have an information page on the author, whatever they publish, they take through the author first, and you read it and you say, I agree, that is accurate. So anytime somebody tells you, they might have been just a publisher saying that, no. As an author, I see everything inside the book and everything on the book, and I approve it before it's published. So, lawyer Robert Beattie assisted the police during the 30-year search for the BTK strangler, and was instrumental in the long-awaited arrest of a suspect. That's because he went public with his book coming out, and that's when Dennis Rader decided to start sending in his letters and got screwed himself because he thought he was smart, but he wasn't as smart as he thought. So here he shares his inside knowledge of the case, from its terrifying beginnings to the most up-to-date developments. Okay, so this was the what do you call it, the Bible of BTK from the beginning. Now, what's fascinating about all of this is that in the beginning, the first crime, the Otero crime, let's see if I can go back and find. Now, I apologize for little teeny things I can't see, so I might have to flash them on the screen. All right, here we go. This is from his book. Now, in case you can't remember, the Otero crime was the very first crime that was attributed to BTK. He killed a family of 4: the mother, the father, one of the brothers, and this little girl named Josie. Now, Josie was that was the most horrifying part of the crime, because she was hung. She wasn't raped, but she was hung. And then what it says, you can see where I circled it, the lab people had scraped dried fluid from her thigh. When they put the scrapings under a microscope, they saw sperm. Okay. Now, that's what is said by Robert Beattie. Now, what's really interesting about this whole thing is, and it gets a little confusing, is there's a thing called, you have autopsies, and you have police reports and evidence reports. Sometimes what I've seen with this crime is they'll say the autopsy said there was dried semen on Josie's leg. Well, Corey, you know what that means. What does that mean when you're just saying the autopsy report as opposed to the evidence and police report?
Well, what I noticed with that issue is that doesn't necessarily mean that there was only semen found on Josie's leg, because the medical examiner, probably hasn't been to the crime scene, and that's not part of the autopsy report.
See, I told you Corey was smart. That's why I invited Corey on the show. He's not an idiot. But that's exactly correct. So Corey has absolutely explained it. However, intimately involved in the case, assisting, you would think he would know a little bit more than just the autopsy report. You would think he would know the police report. Now, let me go to, this is the next book. John Douglas. He was the FBI profiler, one of the FBI profilers brought in to help the Wichita police. Okay, now, he says, let's see if I have this in the right place. Okay. Now he uses an alias for the people because he's at this point he doesn't want to use their real names. I did that in one of my books that I read. It says here the police report described now this is interesting, Corey. The police report. Now we're not talking about the autopsy report. We're talking about the police report. The police report described semen found on Melissa's leg. Nowhere in this book, during the time he's working with the police and saw the police report, does he say there was any other semen found outside of Melissa's leg, which is Josie, which is the actual name of the girl. It's Josie's leg. Now, I have worked with police departments. I've been brought in on cases. And here's the thing. One could say, well, maybe he never saw actual police reports or evidence reports. Maybe they kept them on the side, But, it's the FBI. If they actually allow the FBI in, which a lot of police departments don't actually like the FBI rolling in, but if they do let them in, you're actually going to think, oh, you can't see any of the information? Just sit out there, we'll let you know what we think. No. So when I went to work with police departments, what happened was this. I'd walk in and they'd welcome me, and I'd say hello. Then they'd say, here's a room for you to sit in. It's not like Criminal Minds. I didn't get anything fancy. I'm sitting in an interrogation room with no windows all day long, 10 to 12 hours. And they'd say to me, they put me at the table, and they say, what do you want to see? And I'd say, I want to see the crime scene photos. Then I want to see the police reports. Then I want to see the evidence reports. Then I want to see the interviews. And I work my way through, right? I saw everything they had that I thought was worthwhile. There was no time in any case I ever worked that I did not see the autopsy report, the photos, the autopsy photos, the crime scene photos, and the evidence information. Never. So I would know absolutely if I were at that crime, if I were reviewing the crime like John Douglas, I would be reviewing and saying, okay, they've got semen on Josie's leg, and look, they've got semen elsewhere. He doesn't say that in this book, and Beattie doesn't say it either. And I'm like, why are they never talking about anything other than her leg? All right, so one could say that they did see more, but they were told by the police not to release that information. Okay. However, they released the DNA information on all the other suspects without any kind of problem. They said that with Fox, Nancy Fox, that they said exactly where they found the DNA on her clothing. That's what they put into evidence, and that's what they tested. With Vicky Wagerly, they said they found semen inside her vagina, and also there was some kind of material under her fingernails. They talked about those two locations and how the DNA was actually different because the DNA inside her was from her husband, and the DNA under the fingernails was from that jerk, right? So they talked about those without any problem. Why would they have any issue about saying, no, there was more DNA than just on her leg. There was DNA on the floor. There's DNA someplace else. Why would they keep that the big hidden secret? I have no answer for that, and it drives me crazy because I'm like, if I had heard about that from the beginning, that in the original books before the trial or the non-trial, in these two books, before that summary of evidence came out, if I had heard that there was semen on the floor, I would go, I wouldn't have cared, right? But look back here. Okay, so they just scraped that off her leg, and then it says here, here, look at this. Okay, the second paragraph. This was stunning news. This is in 2004 when they got the information coming in from Rader, right? That there was a new letter from the killer, right? This was stunning news, though it was good news in context. Although the DNA from the Otero crime scene had degraded and could not be used to link BTK to the Otero murders, BTK had just linked himself to the Otero murders. Now, if captured, he could be prosecuted for them. What? So, what I was told before, which was the DNA was degraded and wasn't usable, now supposedly he had connected himself. Well, he just said he did it. That doesn't connect him. There was never any evidence to connect him to the Bright murder at all. And oh, interesting, Corey, did you know this? Because I read this recently. I thought it was kind of interesting. Well, I read it before, but I reread it. That when the original BTK, or theoretically, the original BTK, when the Otero crimes were committed, those are the four of the family that was murdered. Afterwards, a letter came in claiming that this person had committed the Otero crimes, and he described the Otero crimes and then called himself BTK. Do you know that until 2004, when Rader sent a letter in, they never believed it was actually the killer? That they thought that this was just some fraud, some fake thing sent in, that the actual description of the crime scenes weren't accurate. So they thought maybe one of the cops had actually sent it in as a joke, or somebody else had gotten some info and decided to pretend they were BTK and make up this name and just think it was fun. Most of them actually never believed the original BTK letter was actually the guy who killed the Oteros. And on top of that, he never talked about Catherine Bright, and when he sent his letters in later, he never talked about Catherine Bright either. So the fact is, they said he killed Catherine Bright. I don't like that. Even if you want to say the Otero DNA is okay now, even if you want to go there, the question is, what? Just because he says he killed Bright doesn't mean he did, because even back then they weren't sure that Bright was even connected to any of the murders. So one objection I always have is, don't link somebody to a murder unless you can actually prove it. You can say this, I'm okay with this. We truly believe he did it. We've administratively closed the case. But if ever evidence comes up that this is not so, we'll pursue that particular person. In other words, we think it's him, but can't prove it, so we're not going to say he did it. There's no proof he committed the Catherine Bright murder at all. Zero. So it bugs me that they say that, because a real killer of that girl could be out there. Well, he's probably dead now. He's probably, how old is he? But still, I don't like things attributed that you can't prove. So I don't believe they proved Bright at all. Now the Otero crimes, more interesting. So here's what's kind of fascinating. So we have this, he says, a little semen on the leg, and he looked at the police reports, which means he knows what they found at the scene, but he only says semen on the leg. We have this guy who's supposedly working with the police, intimately knowledge of that, he only says the leg. All the other crimes are clear where they got the evidence. All of a sudden, now watch what happens after the summary of evidence is out. Now there's two books that come out. One is this book, Blind Torture Kill, which is absolutely crap, so don't read it. But it's written by Hirsch Laviana. He's part of, I think, the Wichita Eagle. He's as a reporter. And there's three other people involved. Okay. What he says, let's see, I think I actually have it here. This is after the murders. Okay, it was written in, let's see. Remember, Corey, we had the issue of when people put out books, what did they know by the time they put them out? Right?
Yes, right. That's right.
So this was in 2007. It's 2 years after the summary of evidence should be available to people who are writing a whole book. Because you would think if you're writing a whole book and the trial is, well, the fake trial has already gone on, he's already been convicted, he's already been sentenced, wouldn't you think you look at the summary of evidence? Guess what? Let me see if I can find the crap from this book. Hold on a second. Okay. Trying to figure out where it's, okay, where is it at? Sorry, was this it? Nope, that's the wrong one. I put it on here at the end. That's Inside the Mind of BTK. I'm going to get to him in a minute. Hold on a second. Okay, I'll probably not find it. I thought I put it up here. Okay, I may not have put it up here. Okay. Okay, can't find it. Okay, I'm going to look it in the book. All right, because I circled it. I did. Okay, here we go. No, here we don't go. Where is it? Okay. Hold on, still don't find it. Dang it. Oh, okay, where did it go? What the heck? Okay, so hold on a second. I swear to God I had it here. This is where I ask for patience from all the people who come to my show. Dang it. I actually put this aside too, just for the specific reason of, that's a problem. I put it here somewhere. Where the heck did it go? It's so annoying. Had to be in the beginning of this book.
Can you tell me which part you're looking for? Maybe I remember where it is.
Aha!
What it says.
No, it's funny. I know I have it over here in my the tiny little things. You know, StreamYard is really great, but when you add up all your different the different pages you want to show as an overlay, the overlay is like this small, so it's like you can't see what you put up, which is annoying as hell. Okay, on page. Yeah, I circled it. There it is. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. The lab people had scraped dry fluid from her thigh, Josie's thigh. When they put the scrapings under a microscope, they saw sperm. 2007. They don't talk about any DNA anyplace else but on her thigh. They don't talk about the summary of evidence. It's 2007. These are 4 people writing a book on BTK, getting published by, this is not a self-pub book. It was published by the Beacon Publishing Company. The information about that is not in here. The summary of evidence that it came from anyplace else is not in here. However, if you go back to now, okay, so remember this book by John Douglas, okay, the obsession book. Well, he wrote a second book, which is called Inside the Mind of BTK. Now it gets really interesting. Now it says, okay, let's see if I can find it. Hold on a second. Okay, that is inside. Okay. Hold on a second here. Okay, this is what I want. Okay, if we read this one, this is from Inside the Mind of BTK. It says this on the third paragraph. The partially nude body of Josephine, 11, was discovered hanging from a water pipe in the basement. A large amount of semen was found on her leg. Okay. Now this is interesting. This is page 17. Now you go further. Josephine Otero was in the basement, partially nude, wearing whatever she was wearing, and then it goes down further, and then it says, Investigator Eggleston documented spots or stains on the concrete floor directly in front of Josephine. Now, this was published after after he was convicted, after the summary of evidence was put in, and now suddenly there are spots or stains, which, you know, is interesting, on the floor below her, which I never heard about before. Then it gets more interesting. Check this out. Then it says, oh, the first paragraph. The tips of her toes almost touched the concrete floor. On her leg was a milky, gelatinous substance that appeared to be semen. It had run down her leg, over her sock, and formed a tiny puddle on the floor. Now it's a tiny puddle. And if you go further in his book, his last statement in his book, some of the detectives were perplexed by the seemingly large amount of semen left on the floor in the Otero basement. Like, what? Okay. Exactly how much seminal fluid was present at the scene was never established due to the fact that it had begun to dry and spread out by the time Josie's body was discovered. They thought maybe more than one person was there because there was so much semen, so much ejaculation. But I'm like, Okay, so we've gone from before the trial, some dried semen on her leg, to after the trial, we have puddles. And by the way, Catherine Ramsland also wrote a book, and I don't know where she got her stuff from, but she's like got a puddle like this big by that time. I mean, this dude like, you know, he drinks a lot of protein shakes or something. You know, it's like, whoa. So now there's a huge puddle. So I'm like, if the puddle was there to begin with, why did John Douglas not say this to begin with? That there was semen on her leg and there was semen on the floor below her. Why didn't he say that? Why didn't this guy say that? Why does nobody say that? And then after, what I find strange is after the summary of evidence is there, and they're writing books. Catherine sorry, I can't pronounce her name. Ramsland writes a book. These four guys write a book. And Douglas writes another book. 3 books. Not one of them mentions the summary of evidence. And they never, okay, I'm going to show it now so we can go through that. It's not like there's not information in there. There's interesting information that if I were writing a book, I would want people to know this stuff. I would. Let's see what it says. Daniel Vanstock, I'm not sure how to pronounce that guy's name, DNA analyst, performed a PCR testing on a swab taken from the basement floor. Here we go now. It's on the floor, you see, of the Otero home. So apparently the semen on the leg is no good. There's no question about that. Where Josephine Otero was found hanging. On April 9th, 2004, the report states the DNA profiles they got from that, blah, blah, blah. They got DNA profiles, in other words. Okay? So they did get it. All right. And also it says here, let's see. PCR DNA, the second paragraph, analysis was performed on the oral swabs of Dennis Rader, blah, 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 blah. The profile is compared to the profiles obtained from the evidence from the Otero, Fox, and Wegerle cases. So again, he's being matched up to the Otero crime. Further, let's see. PCR DNA analysis was performed on the oral swabs of Dennis Rader by Ms. Stedman. There's another person. I'm not sure why there's 2 different ones. That's confusing. It doesn't make any sense to me. All right. The profile was compared to the profiles obtained Rader. I'm sorry. The DNA came from Rader. That makes sense. Okay. Then they were compared to the Otero, Fox, and Wegerle cases. And it says it matches. Okay. So, is that the end of that? I think that's basically it. The estimated frequency of the Otero swab profile, and it was strong enough that he matched Rader. Okay. So, in this summary of evidence, there is a lot of information about the basement floor, the puddle, the new puddle that has arrived, now having enough DNA in it to be tested with PCR. I don't object to that. That's not my problem. I just don't understand. What do you think, Corey? Why would nobody mention the puddle until after the trial and after the conviction, and then nobody after the conviction ever mentions the summary of evidence? I'm boggled. Right. I don't understand it.
Okay, well, in the case of John Douglas's first book, Confessions, where he talks about BTK for I think like 1 chapter,
correct.
He definitely he definitely doesn't mention anything about semen being found on the floor. But like I mentioned in one of my emails to you, he changes a lot of things about the crime scene. So I'm kind of just offering a counterpoint.
So what you're thinking is that Hayes being creative?
Well, he definitely is being creative, because if you look at the first line of the first chapter of that book, the chapter is called Motivation X.
Correct.
Which is actually Factor X, but of course he's changing stuff like that.
Right.
But the first paragraph is 3 sentences. They were all dead, all 4 of them, the entire family, and that's not true.
Correct.
He didn't kill the entire family. He killed 4 of them, but there are 3 more that came home and found the bodies. Right? That's the first paragraph of the book. So
wow, I never noticed that, Corey.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of details that, like, I think he says that Julie Otero, the mother, was found on the floor completely nude with a bag over her head, and none of that is true. She was found on the bed fully clothed with no bag on her head. So I'm not saying that he's having fun and making a fake story up or anything like that, but just I don't think we can read this book as a really reliable way to know what the evidence was. Yeah, reliable source.
That's a great point, Corey. Actually.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's actually great. I'm not a fan of John Douglas. Everybody knows that, and John Douglas is not a fan of me.
Okay.
I find him highly dramatic. I don't know how
Yes.
many times he writes about cases and says he like has some kind of, it's like basically having a seizure or something is happening to him physically because he's so stressed out by reading these horrible reports, or he's talked to the killer and it's just like he's is melding with the mind of the killer and it's giving him an aneurysm. And I'm like, dude, you drink too much, because
Right.
I see a lot of crime scene photos. I read a lot of very unpleasant stuff. Either, as some people would say, I'm totally psychopathic, I have no feelings, and or I know how to be professional. And the question yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, I just think that when he writes, I can't tell whether the reason he writes the way he does is because he likes to be dramatic because it sells books.
Right.
But the problem I have, of course, I've never been fond of his profiling methodology. I think he's been way off the mark so many times it's concerning. I like Robert Ressler of the FBI. There's other profilers I have no problem with, but I never have been fond of him as a profiler. But what I have a problem with is this. I also wrote a book, and I did pseudonyms on everybody. But there wasn't one piece of information in that book which was not accurate. Because even if you use a pseudonym, here's what happened with me. So my book, called The Profiler, My Life Hunting Serial Killers and Psychopaths. Sorry about the horrible name. It was put on there by the publisher. But every case in that book was pseudonymed, right? But one of the things I had to do for them to publish it was published by Hyperion, which is an excellent publisher, and they have a huge legal team. So that what I cannot do is put anything in that book which is not true, which is not supported by my notes, because undoubtedly some people will kind of figure out who that pseudonym belongs to, right? And if you say things about the case that is not true, any small thing even, they can sue you for that crap. So usually the legal team should be behind that, making sure that everything you present is actually accurate. Either don't present it because you don't want it known, or present it with a pseudonym but it's still accurate. So if Don Douglas didn't do that, I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? So it's interesting you point that out, because quite frankly, as I said, you really notice things, and sometimes, with all the information coming in, I might, miss things, and I certainly missed that. That he wasn't accurate about one thing, therefore, why would he necessarily be accurate about another? But I still don't know why that's a hidden piece of information, the quote puddle on the floor.
Right.
Why wouldn't the other guy know it either? Why does nobody know this?
If I can offer just a little bit of a
Sure.
counterpoint to a couple of things that you said. So I noticed when I was reading back through Nightmare in Wichita, which is the Robert Beattie book,
Correct.
he actually does mention semen. He says on and around Josie Otero.
Oh, is this where he? But there was like a commentary. Yes, about actually semen being every place in the house, like all over the place. Like,
yeah, right. He's responding to these rumors that were going around at the time that there were semen all over the house, like
right.
by every victim, and he had, I guess he had like 15 protein shakes that day or something. but he's responding to that rumor, and what he says is, first he mentions that semen is mentioned in the autopsy reports as being found only on Josie Otero's inner thigh.
Right.
But right after that, he says, police officers who were at the crime scene tell me that there was also semen on the pipe immediately behind Josie.
Right.
Right. And in another, actually before that, a few pages before that, he says, the only reports of semen I have read in official reports or heard from people who were in the Otero house were on and around Josie Otero.
He read the police reports? Because I didn't see that in the book. I thought the police reports?
He says official reports. I don't know if he means police reports or something else, but
interesting.
That's what he says on and around Jersey.
Somewhere I never saw that, and he, that's interesting. I wonder what part of the book is that in? Do you know what page that is?
Well, I do. I'm using the Kindle version, so I don't know if the page numbers are the same. But it's sucks. Page 4. Yeah, it might be the same. I don't know. It's page 14 and page 21. I think it's all in chapter 1 somewhere.
Okay. Let's see if I can find it. Because when I was there in Wichita, I was told there was only that one sample able to be gotten from Josie's leg, and that sample was degraded to the point where it was not useful in connecting any cases. That's right.
That's what Beattie says as well.
And that's what's so. Trying to see if I can find this here. I know about the pipe thing, but when he said the pipe thing, it was like an offhand comment, like you got some police at the scene and they go, "Whoa, what's that on the pipe?" You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's different from the evidence. The evidence that was gathered. Swabs were done of the pipe, and the evidence of the pipe showed that there was semen present because they said that on her leg. They took the swab of her leg, and there was semen present. Clear.
Right, but you'll notice in the state summary of evidence, it says something like, and then Dennis Rader's DNA was matched against the DNA taken from the Otero basement floor.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
So I don't know what that all means.
And this is what's kind of frustrating because I'm not objecting to the fact it could exist, because this is what I'm trying to get across to people, that when you're looking at a case, as an outsider, okay, I don't know what I would have thought if I were allowed into that case. When I looked at the police reports, I might have gone, well, that's clear. You know what I mean? I've done that in many cases where I've walked in, I thought one thing, and then as soon as I saw all the police reports, what the family told me, completely wrong. You know what I mean? So I'm finding out the truth. I'm like, that's not true. So when you're not inside the case, you can only get a certain amount of information. And then when you're depending on information coming from another source, you don't know whether it's creative fiction, like Douglas. Is it creative fiction? Which I object to, because if you want people to believe you, if you want people to have confidence in you, for God's sake, stop being creative. Put something down that's actually true, that as you know it. You can even say, as far as I know, this is true. But don't put things that, just make up stuff and change things. That's just my opinion, unethical. But when you're outside the case, you got these different situations where even for me, I was outside the case in the sense that when I came into Wichita in 2004, I did talk to the detective at the time who had used to be on the case. And my suspect, we had a whole video to him and everything. We taped the suspect. It was a long interview, a very fascinating interview with questionable things that he said. He's a great suspect because he was already a suspect in another homicide of his significant other, and they were looking at him as a suspect in the BTK crimes, and he did work for Coleman, and he worked on the line. He had connections to the two women that were murdered, Julie Otero and Bright. So that's why he was such a great suspect. And then there was this 3 years downtime, and the likelihood of a copycat was not unrealistic, that somebody could have come in and said, okay, I'm going to claim those too, because he likes to claim things anyway. But that it could have been him from the beginning, yes. But because I wasn't allowed to read the police reports and the evidence reports, I can't personally say what is true and what isn't true. So when I went in, I had to depend on my interviews with law enforcement, which said that the DNA was what it was in the Otero crime, and then Beattie's book, and then Douglas's book, and nothing until the actual, and then when he's convicted, and I asked the question specifically to the DA, where did you get these Otero stuff? She wouldn't even answer me, and I'm like, if a criminal profiler publicly asks you where the hell you got the Otero DNA, you would think she would just say, "Read the summary of evidence. I'll send it over here. I'll send it over to you. It's in the summary of evidence." It was. We had this. We thought, if it's a puddle, they had a lot of DNA. I don't know why they never. One of the things. Remember we were talking about, Corey, is why they didn't actually go and get the DNA from the Otero crime analyzed earlier, because they had Fox analyzed earlier, and they pretty much said anybody who was connected to that Fox crime was the guy who did it, right? Eventually, Wagerly was matched to Fox too, and then the Otero one was finally done. And I'm thinking, why did they wait so long on the Otero one if there was a puddle? A puddle! That's a lot of DNA, you know what I mean? A puddle.
Right, they keep talking about how Ken Landwehr, who was sort of in charge of the investigation, was such a great investigator, partly because he refused to test the Otero DNA because they had such a small amount of it that it might use up the sample, and then they wouldn't be able to use it in the future. But then on the other hand, you have John Douglas saying there's a massive puddle of semen on the floor, and if that's the case, then why not test part of it?
Yeah, this is the kind of things that just you're hearing one thing and then you're hearing other, and you just don't know where the truth lies. And what really frustrates me is after all this is ended, why do the books written not just say, here's a summary of evidence and here's what they tested? Nobody will talk about it. And it makes me think they didn't know about the summary of evidence either.
Right.
Maybe not, but maybe it wasn't their fault. Maybe for the same reason I never knew. And when I asked the DA about it, she never told me, here's the link, here it is. She never told me. She never told Douglas. She never told Ramsland. What's the big or these four guys? Why would they not let everybody know about the summary of evidence? Why would it be found years later? I can't understand this. It's like, I'm not saying that there's fraud, but you wonder why. Why would you not say, here it is? Now I'm just going to mention this. I'm just going to be a. Okay, Martin had to come in. I got to put Martin's thing up. One man's puddle is another man's small sample. I'm not going to go there. This is going to turn into a porn show. True. It's actually true. So I'm going to take a look at some of the comments here. So Douglas's book is sprinkled with creativity. Yeah, and I know a lot of people love John Douglas's books, but he's very dramatic. He's a reason behind things like Criminal Minds and all these shows that are all full of bunk and crap. I've never been fond of his promotion of criminal profiling as the methodology of all this getting inside the minds of the killer crap and all this stuff where you meld with the minds and you lose your damn mind and somehow you have to start I'm like, this is just nonsense. I mean, you can look at a criminal report, you can look at photos, you can understand I can go interview Dennis Rader, and it's not gonna get to me. He can describe things to me and I'm like, I've heard this before. I'm not saying it's pleasant. It's not pleasant. But I've read very unpleasant renditions, like for example, Sandra London, who is an interesting woman. Anyway, she did a couple books, and one of them was with the serial killer Danny Rowling. And Danny Rowling gleefully describes his crimes. Gleefully. Like you're watching the crime go down like a slasher film. Like you're the guy who's doing it, and you watch. He's making up what the woman is saying to him, which is all lies. But it's pretty appalling. It's disgusting. And I also read the other book done by the serial killer in Florida, the cop bomb. She also wrote his other book. Oh, now I'm blanking. Anyway, he writes all this stuff, all his fantasies, and they're gruesome and disgusting and repulsive. I've read all of those. I can still talk to a serial killer and not have emotional breakdown. I mean, because if you cannot separate your life from what you're having to deal with when you're talking to killers or reading what their thoughts are, you're in the wrong business. So I'm sorry, John Douglas, but if you were having an emotional breakdown and aneurysm, because either you're lying or you drink too much or you shouldn't be in the business. I have a problem with his fanciful stuff. Shall I say that? Fanciful. I don't like it. Martin is not behaving. No, we can't have Martin behaving. That would just be so wrong. Martin says, all I need now is to add protein shakes to my shopping list. Oh my God, that's right. Let me go back up. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. That we never knew what was in those reports. I was going to do the conspiracy theory thing, just for the sake of it. Okay, I'm gonna put it out there. Now, here's what happens, and it even happens in my own brain. So you start wondering why people aren't telling you the absolute truth. Why are things not making sense along the way? Why do we hear different stories? Why are things hidden? Why do people not even know about the summary of evidence when it was there? All these people, including myself, never heard of the summary of evidence. Why are they never included in their books? Where was it? Why was this puddle kind of, a non-puddle and a puddle and a non-puddle and a puddle? Why are we not hearing things accurately? So then you start thinking this kind of thing. Landwehr stands at the trial and he says he's connected to two of the crimes. And I'm like, shouldn't it be three? You imagine that court, right? Shouldn't it be three? Yes, it should be three. Because you've already done all the DNA testing, haven't you? And you've got testing. You've got supposedly Rader connected to the Otero crimes. There's a puddle on the floor, suddenly. Now you've got DNA from the puddle, and you've matched it to him. That's 3 crimes. Why are you not saying 3 crimes? Why are you saying 2 crimes? Now, could it have been a slip of the tongue? Yeah, it could have been just you made a mistake. So then you start going, okay, did they just want to close this case out? And they had to have the Otero crimes part of it. Because the whole big thing about this was, he's the original BTK. We got to have Rader. We want to close cases. And let me tell you, I've seen it before. We close cases down with somebody who is not the actual killer. You could do it administratively. You could just say he claimed he did it. It's been done before. Now, they had him on the 5 crimes, absolutely. They don't have him on Bright. But if they can get him back to Otero, they can close the whole thing out and everybody's a hero, especially Landwehr. Okay, and our DA. So here's the conspiracy theory for you. So now people go, well, I'm not hearing the truth. Things are going back and forth. I'm confused about why you wouldn't be public about this earlier. How do we know one of 2 things? One, that how do we know the DNA you tested came from the Otero crime? Because if you got, you got swabs from other crimes, like here's a few from Nancy Fox, we'll just use this one and put it over there with the Otero crime. And now we'll just test that one and say it's the Otero swab. No, lo and behold, there's DNA from the Otero crime. Because we use this, we already knew what the other swabs had on them. All I have to do is move it over. That's one theory. Second theory could be, just never was a swab. They just wrote it down on a piece of paper. You can type anything on a piece of paper and say it's true. Doesn't mean it's true. It's on a piece of paper. It's one of the reasons I personally like things to go to trial on these things, because I want the defense attorney, even if I think he's wrong, to be able to say, I want to see the information that this was tested properly. I want to know how the testing went. I want to see the original police report that says you swabbed the floor. I want to know how many swabs. I want to know every bit of information all the way up until the time you claim that these swabs were from the Otero crime and that they tested positive for matching Rader. I want to know this. The problem is we'll never know this. And does it ever happen that there's fraud? And I know people are going to say, well, oh my God, never. I would say that's not true. There have been incidents of fraud with DNA. I'm not saying in this case, because I don't have an objection to him being the original BTK. I don't. But as far as I'm concerned, all I see is a piece of paper. And I don't know everything linked from the beginning. That they actually swabbed the floor, and that the floor swabs were positive for semen, and that was then put away, and therefore eventually tested when Landwehr said he was holding on to it forever and ever and ever, which he might have been doing legitimately, mind you. Might have been a great idea, because maybe the first swab from her leg failed, and he's like, well, we're not going to make that mistake twice. We're going to make sure we just hold on to this crap until it, we absolutely, maybe there'll be, better techniques in the future, which is true. Because back in the day when the Oteros were killed, you couldn't get much out of that crap at all, So there was very limited information, and then PCR testing came in, and then STR testing came in. So everything has improved dramatically. So Landwehr is correct about that. I don't object to that. I just have a problem with not having seen everything in a row, where things link together properly, where instead you hear this story, then that story, then this story, then that story, then this story, then that story. And this story doesn't show up, and it's all confusing, and it makes no sense. That's my problem. Not so much that he couldn't be it, but I know, why do we not know these things in proper order? And for the police, I've said this over and over with law enforcement and with prosecution, you want to have the faith of the public, and you don't want to put stuff out there that is incorrect, questionable, and unproven. And in this case, all three of those things are a problem, because the stories have changed, and the puddle appeared, and we only knew about it after the fact, and then half the people still seem to know about it because that report didn't seem to go out to the public terribly well. So yeah, it's a really strange case, Corey, and I'm really glad you found that particular document. I say I was actually stunned. I really was. Not because of I thought if I'd known about it at the time, or the DA had come back to me and said, hey, just look at this. We did analyze it. There was the police. Here's a police report that showed that there was they had tested other DNA. They had that other testing way back when. They just didn't do it. I mean, they had the DNA, the semen from the floor. I would have gone, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. This creep's a serial killer. I don't care if he's original BTK or not. But what a weird response not to say, hey, the evidence is there, and here's the evidence of the evidence. And then you found it, and I'm like, and I find out about this how many years later? What is it now? 17 years later. So you did an absolutely great job. What is just some terrible stuff being written here in the chat room, Corey? So I have to laugh.
Oh, let me see what this says.
Oh, it's pretty funny. Let me see what Lisa says. How many references to this 92-page document did Corey find over the years? He said that there was 2 years after its publication date. Any other references? What do you think, Corey?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm so confused by now. I'm like, we're all confused.
Yeah, I didn't spend that much time trying to verify that this document was available at some point after it had been submitted to the court. So I think I just saw this one message board, and I kind of said, okay, unless someone has falsified a court document and then uploaded that falsified version after someone referred to it on a message board, then that would be a huge issue. Well, but I don't know.
I think the court document is the court doc. I have no question about the court document being accurate. That's not a problem. I find it just incredibly odd that it wasn't made public, and that Landwehr gets up in court, right, like before they make it before they file it, right, and says there's 2 crimes and not 3.
Right.
And then all these people write books, and they're not talking. I mean, I'm writing a book on BTK. Do you not think I would not include the summary of evidence? Oh, here's something interesting. You remember the it's called the mother load. I think it's called the mother load. In the summary of evidence, they have the mother load. The mother load is all the stuff they found in Dennis Rader's little files, and he had a lot of crap. He had things on Wiggly, Fox, Bian. He had the mother load. The corrector at that. The guy had documented a whole bunch of things and had a huge amount of souvenirs. The guy is definitely linked to all those other crimes, right? That actually comes from the summary of evidence. But yet they don't talk about the DNA, which comes right before the mother load page. If you saw the mother load page, wouldn't you have seen the DNA page. You think? I don't understand that. Unless, I have no idea. It's like, did they, see the motherlode thing, I knew about the motherlode. They put that public, as a matter of fact. Oh, that's right. That was public, the motherlode page. All the things they found. And I remember saying to myself, when that information came out, I was like, okay, there's no question in my mind. He killed Fox. He killed Wiggerly. He killed Vianne. He killed, what's the other two women? Myrtle? I forgot her name. Sorry, victims. There's two more.
Maureen Hedge.
Huh? Thank you.
Maureen Hedge.
And what's the other one?
And Dolores Davis.
There you go. So he had so much information. I was like, he sure did those women. I never questioned the fact that this motherlode. So I knew that in 2005 when he was convicted. I knew that motherlode existed, the whole list of it, right? That came from the summary of evidence. But yet, the information on the DNA was never released, as far as I know. And so, yes, there were, so like this book, that does, the motherlode thing is, it's in this book. There's for sure in this book. Here it is, right here. Right here. Let me put it up. This is if I'm sure you probably can't read it here, but you can see all those things. The full-size version of Rader's fictional Jakey story. The original full-size version of Death on a Cold January Morning. This is the motherlode. A large white 3-ring binder was labeled something or other. Communications. It held. And this is the motherlode. It's right here in this book. It's here. But the DNA information in the summary report is not here. If they read this from the summary report, don't you think they would put the DNA information in? Because to me, this is good information, but the DNA, I definitely would include that. If I'm writing a book, I put that in there for a heartbeat. Hey, this is where they got the DNA. This is when they did it. I put that in. It's not in here. So I begin to wonder whether I knew about the motherlode from the summary of evidence, but I never knew about anything else. I wonder, is that the thing that they put out? So that therefore, myself, and the authors here, and others knew about that, but they never actually saw the summary of evidence with the DNA part of it. And why not? Why not?
I think that if I remember correctly, in Bind, Torture, Kill, they actually do mention the Otero DNA at a couple of places. They say, let me see if I have it in my notes here.
Corey, they mention it. They mention it. People mention the Otero DNA. They just don't mention how it was gotten and how it was. Yes, they mention it. That's why I always said, you keep talking about the Otero DNA. I knew that they were connecting him through Otero DNA, but that's why I wrote to the DA and said, hey, if there's Otero DNA, where did it come from? Because I was curious about how they keep mentioning this, and yet I see no reports on it. And she didn't respond properly. So yes, they did mention Otero DNA, but never referred to the summary of evidence which would have listed it. And that's what I don't understand.
So you're saying they never say, based on our analysis of the summary of evidence document, we know that that investigators obtained the Otero DNA and analyzed it and all that kind of thing. That they aren't telling us that they looked at the summary of evidence.
Right.
Okay. I agree with that.
That's what bothers me, because to me, when I'm writing a book, the best thing I can do is provide evidence, right? Because I want people to believe what the hell I'm saying. You know what I mean? If I'm going to say, oh, this is true, I kind of want to present the evidence. And in this case, if the summary of evidence was available to them, would they not have used it to say, hey, look at this, it's right here. I put it up, right? Because you found it, right? Did I hide it once you found it? No, I put it up. There it is. You see it. You can read it. You can read who did the testing, when, the date they did the testing, what they found out from the testing. And yet, oddly, nobody talks about doesn't show the information of the summary of evidence. And I didn't know about it until you pointed it out. Almost 2 decades later. It's like, I'm not saying that it was fraudulent. I'm not saying that it's fake. I'm just saying that I don't understand. And this really, I have tremendous issues with either. There's two possibilities. One, it is fake. You just wrote shit that wasn't even true, or you used a swab that wasn't from the Otero scenes to come up with a DNA profile. You can call it a conspiracy theory, but that's one possibility. The other possibility is you have the worst communication methods ever. And that's also possible because I've seen that before with law enforcement. And I have a problem with that because although I know sometimes law enforcement cannot release certain information, I don't have an issue with that. But when you withhold information or twist information or not provide information when there's no good reason to do so, then what you're doing is you're misleading the public for reasons which I don't even know why you're misleading the public. In this particular case, the summary of evidence, I would have, I said, shouted that from the hilltops. Once I was done, I put it all out there. It wouldn't be something I wouldn't let authors know about or put out to me. Send me. She could have just sent me. I could just simply said, "Hey, Pat, you're an idiot. I would have gone, oops, never mind, guys. But because it was so hidden, it makes one wonder. And then I wonder, from the time it happened, do we have police reports proving that the evidence was collected from the floor, that the evidence was stored properly? Remember the envelope thing? Oh, that was such a weird thing, the envelope thing. I still don't understand the envelope thing. Yeah, I've got to trace here. I can find it. Corey and I went over this because it's like, what? Okay, where's the envelope? There was a weird. Okay, I'm gonna have to flip through things because there was. Yeah,
it's in the Robert Beattie book.
Yeah, that's it was. But I put it here because I thought it was the strangest thing. This envelope crap. Oh, here it is. Of course, this is some kind of stupid thing they were doing with students. So anyway, according to another student grand juror, Detective Ken Ledwer of the WPD was at that very moment attempting to obtain BTK DNA from an envelope via PCR technique. And what was interesting about that, which we both noted, was that later on when he said that they had gotten the Otero DNA, they said from an envelope. And I was like, I asked you this, Corey, was it from this envelope, like from, he licked an envelope and sent it, like Dennis Rader licked an envelope and sent it in, and they were trying to see if there was evidence? Well, Dennis Rader says, I'm not an idiot, I use water. So Ken Ledwer may well have been, thinking, hopefully the dude licked it, because sometimes they're stupid. And he was hoping to get DNA from that envelope. That makes sense to me. But then later on they said that they had gotten evidence from Wegerle, Fox, and the envelope that Ken Ledwer had. And I remember saying, this is the Otero evidence is from an envelope? And what did you point out? I'm trying to remember how you said this. You said
it's pretty convoluted. I mean, you have to read like 4 different books to understand this. But the Robert Beattie book is the exact quote that you just said. Ken Ledwer was at that very moment, which I know because I read another paragraph. It was October 8th, 2003.
Right.
Was trying to obtain BTK DNA from an envelope via PCR technique. Okay, fine.
Okay.
So now forget Robert Beattie. Now you have to go to the book Bind, Torture, Kill.
Okay.
And they tell you that the cops they're talking about whether they should test the DNA now or wait until later.
Right.
And they're saying the cops had BTK's DNA in the dried semen stored in an envelope since the Oteros died. And so
right.
So go back to Robert Beattie. That's October the 8th, 2003. Right. At that point, they already have the Nancy Fox DNA.
Correct.
And they sent in Vicky Wegerle's DNA for analysis in February of 2000. That came back over 3 years later in 2003, August 2003. So the only DNA profile they didn't have at that time was the Oteros, which we know was stored in an envelope. So I speculated in an email to you, and I think there's probably something to this, that Beattie is telling you, sort of, that they were testing the DNA from the Otero scene, but he's not mentioning that it is the Otero DNA. He just, because otherwise he would
Right.
just say, oh, it's the Nancy Fox DNA that they were testing at that moment, right?
Right.
So why doesn't he say that? And also, one more thing. This is October 2003. I believe this is before the return of BTK. It's before he sent in
Correct.
any more
2003 is
packages.
before the Rader pops back up again. Right.
Right, exactly, before he reemerged.
Correct.
So there wouldn't be any envelopes to try to test unless they were from his communications, like in 1974.
That's brilliant. Okay. Okay.
So
I told
that's
you
why
guys,
I
Corey's
think.
smart. I like Corey.
Thank you very much.
That's really good.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so so we're just saying is that because he had not returned, that envelope he had to be referring to had to be an envelope that was an evidence envelope containing the Otero DNA, whether it came from her leg or from a massive puddle on the floor.
Exactly, right.
Right. Interesting. Here's what's so sad about this whole thing. I know I've always loved Alice in Wonderland, and there's a saying in Alice in Wonderland: "Say what you mean and mean what you say." And I have been going by that rule for years. I told my kids that too, because I always try say what you mean and mean what you say. In other words, don't say crap that I can't decipher, and then I'm trying to figure out what the hell you were talking about. Just say what you mean and say what you mean and mean what you say. So I want to know what the hell was in the envelope. I want to know, where did the envelope contents come from? Was it a number of swabs? What did you swab the leg? Did you swab a pipe? Did you swab the floor? Do you have 10 swabs? Do you have one swab for with the floor, one swab for I want to know what the swabs are doing. I want to know what you found on the swabs. I want to know what you're holding for future. I want to know this information. Instead, what we get is kind of like very vague stuff, which is so frustrating. And I just say it leads to confusion, and I just don't like confusion. And then can lead to that once you lie to me, or you're not clear with me, then I don't trust you. And I find that concerning. Another thing I told my kids a long time ago when I was raising them, I said, look, don't ever lie to me. Because once you lie, I have a problem ever believing you again. And I hate to say that's true, that it's that vicious, but it is. If you can look at me in the eye. I remember this kid. This kid came over to my house once. He's playing with my children. and he's got something in his hand. And I'm like, he was like 7 years old. And I'm like, do you have something in the hand which belongs to me? He goes, no. I open it up, and it's a jewelry from the house. And I'm like, really? So the problem was, after that, I didn't trust the kid. So I told my kids, I said, look, once you start lying, I have trouble trusting you again. Because I already know you're willing to lie. So where are we at then? So with law enforcement and prosecution, I have the same issue. And profilers, tell what you know. Say what say. I want to know what you're saying to me is what you mean, and you mean what you say. Don't use euphemisms. Don't use things I don't understand. Don't use vague stuff. Don't, like Douglas, just make up crap. Which isn't even true at all. Don't do that kind of stuff, because it causes distrust. And with law enforcement and profiling, what we want to know is that, because this is a legal issue, it's not fiction. If you write a fiction book, you can write whatever you want to write, because it's just a story. But this is real life. These are people's lives on the line. This is our confidence in law enforcement and prosecution. And like the Innocence Project, which I'm not overly fond of, because they also are not terribly ethical and don't tell us the truth and don't mean what they say and say what they mean. They just want to get people off no matter what. I'm frustrated because I want them to try to get truly innocent people out of prison. I want them to present evidence that shows their innocence, not some technicality that gets them out even though they killed 7 different people, and then lie about it, and then everybody cheers and they get $1 million. That bothers me. So the Innocence Project is also guilty of this. They're not concerned necessarily how innocent the people are. They're pushing a death penalty issue and an anti-government issue. So it's like, when we're talking about legal things, we want to be sure we're as fair and as open and honest as we could be, so we can trust law enforcement, we can trust the prosecution, And we can even trust people like the Innocence Project to do the right thing, to find the truth, to provide justice. And I just feel that with all this shenanigans going on, it's really hard to know who to believe. Um, let me check. I got to go down here now. Corey, do you have a law enforcement or law background?
No, I don't.
But he should, because he's really good. I want to say, Lisa, you know, when Corey came through, I asked him before the show, I wanted to have him on because I was really impressed with his work and his intelligence and his analytical skills. And if you know me, some people don't find me a legitimate profiler because I was self-trained. I have a master's degree in criminal justice. I've worked on many cases, but I'm not FBI, and so I have people who disagree with me existing. But my whole thing has always been this: I really don't give a crap about your background. I give a crap about what you can do. I'm very interested in your abilities, and I'm impressed by Corey. I really am impressed, Corey, because you're really able to analyze very well. So, not having a law enforcement background, you still got it.
Thank you, Pat.
Lisa says, I see, thanks. He's a very good analytical mind. Yes, indeed. I appreciate it in your conversation with him, Pat. One of the things I hope to achieve with this channel, we have a lot of channels which I disagree with, and you know that I call a lot of people grifters because they don't have a law enforcement background. They're not profilers. But what they do is try to stir up emotions and point fingers at people and talk about a lot of crap, and people then go out into the community and start harassing people. They all think they're all armchair profilers, and we know who did it, and we think he did it, and I'm like, oh, stop this stuff. My problem is not the fact that they're not law enforcement or profilers. My problem is that they're misleading people, because I have a great respect for anybody who has an analytical mind, and I love to have a good discussion with somebody who is smart, and I found Corey to be this. That's why I had him on. So, let's see what else you have. Oh, let me see what else we have here. Wait a minute. What does Red Rum say? Joe. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't see what Joe's thought was. Wait a minute. I got to go back now. I got to go back and find out what Joe said. I got to work back up here. What did Joe? What did you say about me? Joe. Every time Pat says puddle, I have a mental image of a child wearing Wellington boots, jumping in and splashing around. I doubt if I'll sleep tonight. That was actually, Joe. That's exactly what I thought about when Douglas is saying a puddle. I'm like, damn. I mean, really, dude. I mean, he's suffering some kind of inferiority complex or something. Because puddle, puddle. So anyway, then what he said was. Okay, let me go back here. So Red Rum says, Joe, that's a worrying thought. Thank God we're not in a conference room listening to cases with Pat Brown. We'd all be sent out of the room for laughing. Hey, you know how often I fall apart on these shows and laugh myself to death and can't recover. So, yeah. I've always said I'm an educational channel, but I do like to have at least, a pleasant time. And in spite of the sad information and sad cases, I still have to have a good laugh occasionally. Otherwise, I can't survive this. I'm going backward here. Molly says the mother load of mother loads was not in the book. Actually, it was in the book. Some of the books, so it was there. Let's see what this says. Lisa, it's actually a good thing Corey did find mention of the summary report so soon after the event. Oh, you mean, okay, or we would have gone wild with conspiracy theories. Okay, so, all right. The event, Corey didn't find it after the event, which would be 2005 when the actual thing went down. The event I'm assuming you're talking about is my show. So I was leading you into conspiracy theory land, and Corey has brought you back to earth. Okay, I'm still going to say, we haven't proven that the evidence, that it was properly tested, that it was actually the proper DNA. This is stuff we don't know because they didn't allow us to know it. Or it's just bad communications. Don't know which one it is. Only because I have had other cases where I know the DNA is not actually true. that I know it's falsified or the report is falsified. I have run into that, so I'm not saying that this is true here. I'm just saying the problem is with their weird communications and all the different stories that we've heard. We have not yet proven that the proper DNA was taken from the floor, that it was kept properly. Remember, it was taken in. Corey, do you remember when it first happened? When was the Otero crimes? Because that's a long time ago.
Yeah, that was January 1974.
God, he's so good with this. I mean, Corey wrote me and said, "I don't. You have a good memory." I'm like, Corey, you do not know me. I have no memory at all.
Well, but
you have a memory.
You can do this with like 100 other cases too. I only know this one case.
Okay, 74.
And a couple more.
74. So there was a 74 to 2004, right? Okay.
74. That's
84,
right.
94. So we're talking about 30 years.
Right.
Okay. So the DNA had to be stored for 30 years. I'm going to say we have had some incredible advances in DNA. Where one of the things that's really cool these days is that a guy commits a crime back before DNA, and he's like making puddles every place. He's puddling away, right? Thinking, it don't matter. And then 30 or 40 years later, they're like, oh, we got DNA and we know it's you. And he's like 80 years old. He's like, oh, shit. Okay, I'm going to prison now. Okay. Or it's too late. That does happen. But here's the other thing that happens. 30 years of storage. I'm going to say that I have dealt with a lot of cases that you wish things were stored really, really well. But the envelope, envelopes don't necessarily get stored really well. And so the question is, when Beattie said the DNA was degraded, clearly whatever was on her leg went bye-bye, because nobody ever talks about the leg in the later summary of evidence. It's not like, oh, we got DNA from her leg. They didn't. That was degraded. Now, admittedly, they did use that to find out some basics, that he was a non-secretor. And so Dennis Rader is a non-secretor. Now, non-secretors, it's not as big a deal as you think it is, because when I first heard that, I'm thinking, oh, wow, that's so cool. No, it's like 60% of the population is non-secretors, so it's not a big deal. So my suspect, what I call my suspect, I just mean the one I was looking at the time, is also a non-secretor, which is why he remained a suspect. So my suspect was a suspect because he was a non-secretor, like the BTK DNA from the original Otero crime, which was the leg of Josie Otero. So it's possible that that's all they got, and then it degraded and they couldn't do any more with the leg stuff. It is possible that if there was that puddle on the floor, that they did not use that and they kept that, and for whatever reasons, when PCR testing came out, they actually were able to get DNA from that puddle on the floor. It's not a puddle, it was a stain. So let's go. Douglas is just ridiculous. So by the time they got there, it wasn't a puddle, it was something on the floor, and maybe they swapped it. Now it's 30 years. The question is, did it remain? If if the DNA from Josie Otero's leg became degraded, why did not the puddle also become degraded if they were kept in the same circumstances as, both of them were kept? I don't know, and I don't have an answer for that. It could be luck. It could be they used the I don't know. But according to the detective on the case that I talked to and Beattie, they both said that the DNA in the Otero case is too degraded to link to BTK. But yet, 30 years later, there was enough that was not degraded to be able to get a DNA profile off of. I don't know. Fascinating. Don't know if it's true. Just saying. It's interesting. What does Lisa say? I'm with you, Pat. Rather than being enamored with the gore of crime, I prefer and am intrigued by analyzing it and talking about the logistics. Thank you, Lisa. That's what I hope with this channel I try to do. I'm not into gore. I'm not into, oh my God, it's so creepy what he did. I like the analysis issues and the use of the analysis issues. Martin says, strange lack of transparency regarding this important evidential issue. That's a great way to put it, Martin. That's what I don't understand. It seems unnecessary to me that there would be a lack of transparency. It seems like something they would be all over the place saying, hey, we accomplished it. And yet there is this weird transparency. Oh, here's a nice comment. Molly says, Corey, you must have spent zillions of hours on this. Thank you.
Yeah, this is apparently what I choose to do with my free time. So
I'm so sorry, Corey.
Yeah,
Maybe
I did spend. Yeah, maybe. I did spend quite a bit of time reviewing it in the past week or two, as I've been talking to Pat via email about it, and so yeah. Well, so I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
I think everybody has, and one of the things I do point out, just in my own really crappy defense, is that. Not this case particularly, because I was actually involved in this case, so it's like a completely different thing. But sometimes when I talk about cases, and I think this happened with Dr. Grande too. Now I know Dr. Grande does these small 10 or 15 minute little things on cases. I know he just reads Wikipedia and does them, and he gives us an interesting psychological perspective. And sometimes I agree with his psychological perspective. Not so much on his crime scene analysis, but he's amusing and he's interesting and he gives good information. But I know he doesn't spend a lot of time on it, and I know it's because he's pumping out the stuff. I don't pump out quite as much as him, and when I do shows, I spend a lot of time in research. But let's say for example, I'm going to do next Sunday. I'm going to do Adam Walsh. Now, so the Adam Walsh case. Has the Adam Walsh case been solved? And John Walsh thinks so. It has been. I disagree with him. And there's two major books on the case, and one is written. So I've read both books, and I've also was there when John Walsh was promoting the book that he believes is the accurate story, and. I will go back this week. I have them with me. This is one of them. It's called Jeffrey Dahmer's Dirty Secret. And the other one this is the one Walsh approves of, which is Bringing Adam Home. Okay. What do you think I'm going to be doing for the next few days? I'm going to be rereading both of these damn books and also analyzing other issues of the case. But I'm doing that this week. So this is like the Adam Walsh case is not like my thing. So what happens is a lot of times when I do cases, there are people who have been studying one case because they're fascinated with one case. They put hundreds of hours in, and then I come along with 10 hours, and they're like, you don't know crap, Pat. And I'm like, I do have limitations of how many hours I'm going to put into something. So I'm always appreciative when some people are just like obsessed and actually have a whole bunch of useless information from grifter YouTube channels, which are full of gossip and garbage. But Corey, on the other hand, which I appreciate. Oh, there he is. Which I appreciate. Is that what you look like, Corey? Oh, hi, Corey. Corey actually presented useful and documented information, which is why I appreciated what he had to say, and which is why I wanted him to come on the show, because he wasn't just one of those people. And so I was like really appreciative, good analytical skills, good researching skills, and had legitimate information. And now I have learned something myself, and it's been very interesting. And I'm glad, Corey, I'm glad you came on, and I think everybody enjoyed having you here. So that was fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I will probably let you go now because I guess it's like time for dinner or something. I had to send my daughter and my granddaughter out with the dog, because otherwise you'd hear a lot of noise and a barking dog in the background. So I was like, I'm like, how long can you spend? It's freezing cold at the beach right now, so they can't even go to the beach. So I was like, how long can you shop? Oh, they're such nice. I have a very nice daughter and granddaughter. Dog doesn't care about me. But Lisa says, Corey, thank you for joining us as a special guest. Please join us again. Oh, okay.
I will.
So
Thank
Corey,
you.
when you find I'm wrong about anything else, that I missed something, You can give me my comeuppance another time, and I would be happy to have you on because you're very
I'll do my
smart.
best.
All right, thank you. So
Thank you
I'll
very
let you
much.
go. So, oh, look at this. It was a pleasure, Corey. Thank you. Corey, okay. Do you want to answer this, or do you just want to run away really quickly?
Oh, I'll answer a question.
Okay, Corey, Ann says, what is your take on John Douglas?
Oh, well, honestly, I kind of agree with what Pat said because, I mean, I enjoy a lot of his. No, I enjoy a lot of what he writes. Like his book, Inside the Mind of BTK, I think has some really interesting stuff. Just because he had access to all of Dennis Rader's journals and all his drawings,
and he
photos,
did interview
all kinds of stuff.
And he did interview him.
And he interviewed him.
That's correct.
Kind of at the end of the book, and he will just go through his journals and just tell you what it says.
Right.
And Dennis Rader, like, if you believe that Dennis Rader killed the Oteros, then in that case it's very interesting because he just, I mean, he goes into so much detail about it, and it's a little disturbing to read, of course, but it's also very, very interesting. On the other hand, in that same book, he talks about, as I was reading about how Dennis Rader had a horrible headache after he killed the Oteros, and it was a pounding headache, and he couldn't do anything about it. And I noticed that as I read this, I felt the pressure behind my eyes starting to develop. Like he's getting the same headache that Dennis Rader had, So there's a lot of that kind of stuff in it too. So I agree with that criticism. But I still think it's a good book.
I want to point out, Corey, you say something good, and I do say this a lot. Even when I disagree with somebody, and they're not my favorite, I always say this: don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because it doesn't mean they don't have something to offer. It doesn't mean they don't have something to add to the discussion, and we can discuss whether we agree with it or don't agree with it, but it doesn't mean that everything they say is worthless. I do have a lot of issues with Douglas because I don't agree with the FBI profiling technique. I don't agree with his determinations on a number of cases, which I find are more monetarily supported than evidence supported. I have issues with him more than any other profiler. I will say that. However, it doesn't mean that every single thing he's done is useless. You know what I'm saying? And I hope the same thing is true about me. And there are people that go, well, Pat, I don't agree with you about that. I'm like, okay, but I hope you still learn from me. And I hope we can, by gathering information from different sources, you can gain knowledge, even if you don't always agree with everything. So that's what I always think. And here's another thanks, Corey. Uh-oh. You gotta watch out for Lisa. One more, you can't go home. One more question, Corey. Why are you so interested in this case? That's a good question, Lisa.
Yeah, I don't know if I know the answer to that. I just, why is anyone interested in a case like this? But I guess in all my years of reading true crime, I guess I find BTK to be the most interesting one.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure why. I guess I don't understand how a person could do the things that he did, and
it's fun, Corey. The answer. It's fun. It's fun. I mean, it's an answer we don't like, but I say it all the time. And I've done it on TV so many times, and so the commentator, the host will say, "So Pat, why did you do this?" And I'm like, "Because it was fun." And they're like, "What?" But Donnie Roland, Gerard Schaefer, Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, they had a good time. I mean, why do you, Corey? I don't know what your hobbies are. Hopefully not this. Hopefully not this kind
of hobby. Analyzing puddles is my hobby. Oddly enough.
Corey's perfect for the show. I tell you guys, he's just like you guys. But I mean, I have things I like doing. I love travel. I like reading. I play Scrabble. I play table tennis. Why do I do these things? Because I enjoy them. And serial killers do what they enjoy too. I mean, people say, "Oh, I can't believe that would be something they would enjoy." And I'm like, why not? People go to bars and pick up women and have sex. They enjoy it. People join clubs and do S&M. They enjoy it. People become hunters and shoot animals and hang them up and cut them into pieces, and they enjoy it. I mean, people enjoy things. It's just that people don't understand his enjoyment. But if he didn't like doing it, he wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? He wouldn't do it. And since he's a psychopath, he doesn't have feelings for other human beings. It's, killing them is not an issue. It's his enjoyment that matters. But again, I often say to people, and I know people don't like it, but a lot of times, let's say a guy goes to a bar, he's drinking, she's drinking, and he's like, okay, so he gets to take this girl home, right? Is he really concerned about her pleasure? Or does he just want a good time for himself? A lot of times it's just, that's all it is. Maybe the woman is thinking the same thing, you know what I'm saying? She might be going, I don't give a shit about this dude, but I'm hoping he's good at what he does. She doesn't care that he has a good time. She wants a good time. We're sometimes very selfish, very narcissistic, and we're talking about a psychopath. So once you cross that line, he really does not care how she feels. He cares how he feels. And if it amuses him to kill her, it amuses him to kill her. And it's something we have a hard time understanding because we give some kind of value to another human being. He does not. Mind you, he also doesn't give a crap about his wife or children either. So he might lie that he does, but he doesn't. And so they're useful. They were useful to him. Maybe his wife gave him sex and security. His children gave him pride in being able to produce. Or because they sucked up to him and did stuff for him and he could be, whatever. But that he loved his children and his wife, impossible because he's a psychopath. So we misunderstand how that works. That's terrible. The new pickup place, the protein bar. Oh goodness. Pat, some people also enjoy hunting and killing others. They enjoy it. Yeah, they do. I mean, war is an interesting point because a lot of people involved in war, certain soldiers are scared out of their minds, other soldiers enjoy the hunt. I mean, there's lots of, and the same thing with hunting, hunting animals, or it could be fishing, or it could be some people like to do what's it called, geocaching, where you try to figure out where the thing is hidden. I mean, that's but again, it's a hunt. We like a puzzle. We like these things. So we all have our own versions of it. You know what I mean? So, but it's just luckily most of us don't have that kind of this kind of enjoyment. But we don't have that. What is true story? I once walked into an S&M bar in Vienna, Austria. Of course, I made my excuses and stayed. Oh, Joe. Oh, God. I love the people here. It's just great. So anyway, let me see if there's any more comments before you're still here, Corey?
I'm still here.
Okay, I'm just checking to see if there's any other comments so I can let you go back to your having a life. But I just want to see if anybody else commented something straight to you that I should not ignore because they're so happy you're on this on the show. And I think that's great. I don't usually oh, look at this. Lisa says, thank you, Corey. I just made a Barnes & Noble run the other day and saw it there. I'm building my crime library. All right. You said it's Confessions of a Killer. That was, which one was that? That
was Catherine Catherine
Oh, God, Ramsland? Oh,
yeah.
That Ramsland?
I think so.
I thought that was crap.
That's what it's called.
I'm sorry. I thought her book was garbage. Absolute garbage. She's a true crime author. She does a lot of very, how can we say this? A lot of times she just, she's not involved in cases. She's not a profiler. She's not a detective. She does, I can't even explain what she does. But I did not like that book at all. I thought it was garbage, and I thought that the way she presented things was just almost like, I'm not saying all of her books are this way. Again, I don't like to throw babies out with bathwaters. I'm sure she's done some good stuff. But this was it just looked like to me she got a deal to write some stuff and she did it. I'd take Douglas over her on this case. I really would. I did not like it at all. As a matter of fact, I ordered it off of Amazon. I started reading it. I returned it to Amazon, got my money back. So that didn't do anything for me. In case you read this later, please repeat the Beattie book versus the autopsy report. Okay, the Beattie book is this. Um, I don't know what you mean by the autopsy report. I mean, there's.
I think I know what she's getting at.
Oh, good.
I think
Go
you
for it.
pointed out that the autopsy report says that there was
Oh,
semen found on
correct.
Josie's leg, and then we were saying, well, that's what the autopsy report would
Right.
say because it's not talking about the crime scene.
Correct. It's just
where
it's
there
just the
was
autopsy of, yeah, the person's
yeah
on the slab. You give your autopsy based on the slab. The person on
right
the slab.
exactly
You're not talking about what happened at the crime scene. So you know that you're not going to get information about semen elsewhere except on Josie. That's correct. Very good. That's a good. Thank you for clearing that up again.
sure.
Better to call Saul. That's funny. I'm going back here. Corey, great find. It seems like a search worded slightly different brings up an entire new set of sources and information. I think that's correct, Corey. Molly's right about that. I mean, sometimes it's like depending on what you put in, you get lucky or you don't. Did you use Google or did you use another search engine?
I don't remember. I normally use Start Page, a search engine called Start Page, but the results really aren't quite as good as Google. So sometimes I'll use Google, but I don't remember exactly how I found that.
Right. I mean, there are different search engines, and what's the other really well known one, which I keep forgetting to use.
There's Bing. There's
Not that one.
DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo. Yeah, that
Yeah.
one. I've been told that I should use that more often because they gather up stuff that Google hasn't. Like Google is really into whoever controls the internet and the media, and so.
Right.
You know, things that are really important are on page 50 of Google, if any place. But they say DuckDuckGo may have stuff that Google will push down and it'll show up on DuckDuckGo because they're not as controlled by the top corporations. So I did not look at DuckDuckGo, so that was probably my fault. I should have done that. A new site for me to obsess over. Yeah, good luck on that. We'll give you more obsessions in your life. All right. Okay, I'm back to the beginning now. All right, I've worked my way back down. I like Wordle. Okay. Somebody likes Wordle. I like Scrabble. I'm a Scrabble player. I'm a tournament, in case you know, I'm a tournament Scrabble player. And so I play at least two or three games of Scrabble every night. And I played in tournaments. I play in clubs. I'm a upper intermediate, just below expert rated Scrabble player. I can't do Wordle just because I'm a Scrabble player, and like I can't do any other word game but Scrabble. I'm kind of like stuck there. What? Scroll up. Martin has a question for Corey. Oh wait, hold on. Did you see it, Martin? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Martin has a good question. Corey, do you think the DNA is decisive evidence to connect BTK to Otero?
Okay. I believe that Dennis Rader killed the Oteros. That's
Okay.
my belief. So with that in mind, I don't really see enough of a reason to doubt the DNA evidence implicating Dennis Rader as the killer of the Oteros. I do think that Pat made some excellent points in her previous video and in this video. So it's not quite that ironclad as I thought before I watched her first video, but I think Dennis Rader is the original BTK.
All right. I don't necessarily disagree with you, Corey. I think it's very valid. And the only reason I would say that I have maybe more doubt than you is because I was there to hear things and didn't get proper answers, and I still don't get proper answers on the where they gathered the DNA evidence and why there's not a chain of evidence. You know what I mean? That's what you're always supposed to have. Is you want to make sure that everything is properly handled. I'm not seeing the information on this, and as a profiler, I'm very particular about that. I'm like, okay, who handled what? When was it logged in? When was it tested? I have a problem with not knowing that. So, and because I've had cases where I've seen fraudulent type of things happen in order to close cases down, I have less confidence. Okay? However, he's a darn good, can't argue that he could well be the guy. You know what I mean? I can't argue that. And if the DNA was legitimately gathered, I don't have a problem with him being connected to BTK and being the guy. I just have real issues with how the chain of evidence went, how they handled it, and how they went public with it or didn't go public with it. So that's my issues with it, and I just wish I didn't have those issues. Bugs me.
Right.
Yeah, chain of custody errors could sink a case. It could, but you know, the problem is we're not hearing about it. See, there was never a trial, so we never actually hear what happened. I would like to be able to go back with a FOIA request. You know, I may have to do that. I would like to do a FOIA request on the. I would like to see the police reports. I would like to see that they actually gathered that DNA from the floor. I want to see how the envelope, according to the old envelope, how the envelope was handled, what was in the envelope, where it was stored, when it was removed, when it was tested. I would like to see that whole issue, and get that information. I would like to know that because of all the squirrely stuff that happened. Now it just may be they're just shitty communicators, and unfortunately, a lot of times police and prosecutors are shitty communicators. That's a fact. So they just may be one of these people that they communicate so badly they make everyone, certain people suspicious. Not you, but me suspicious because I'm not getting a proper story. I might actually think if I have the energy to put a FOIA request just so I can clear up. I'd like to know. I want to see where all this stuff happened, and why you didn't come clean with it to begin with. What's the big secrecy? I don't get it. It's very, very peculiar. But I think that because they didn't go to court, they didn't have to prove anything. So, what is it? Pacu get pumped off? I don't think so. They don't care about me that much. But Pat, what other profilers or authors of LA think as you do regarding the original BTK? I wouldn't say any other profilers necessarily think so. I would say there are other, as I pointed out, there are detectives who worked on the case who have issues, but they're not going to talk about them. I mean, the problem is when you talk about them, you set yourself up for having Corey call you and say, didn't you see this? I mean, there's a lot of cases that people won't touch. Profilers will not touch because they don't want to say something that's going to piss off 90% of the public, make them look bad, lose fans, lose readers for their next publication. I mean, there's a lot of concerns about your reputation and your future income. That's a big deal. Now, everybody who knows me, and I do doing the YouTube channel, is that I'm willing to take the hit. I am. I've always been willing to take the hit. Luckily, I'm not that concerned about whether I have 1 million viewers. I mean, I'd like to support the channel, but if I don't make $1 million, I'm good with that. I'd rather have an educational channel where we can talk about things and learn, and it's not about perfection or that you have to agree with me or disagree with me. Or you can't find that Corey has had a legitimate argument and has a legitimate analysis. I mean, I think that's fine. But a lot of them aren't going to say anything at this point. I couldn't even get answers. I wrote to Robert Beattie to ask him about the DNA issue, and I wrote to, and I didn't get an answer. So I think he's at this point. He's like, I'm done with that. Corey and Pat, do you know if there were a lot of turnovers of officials, investigators, etc., in the years when the murders occurred? Oh, do you remember reading that, Corey?
Yeah, from what I recall, there was a lot of turnover because you have to remember that the Otero murders were January 1974. Dennis Rader was arrested. I think I know it was in 2005. I think it was March 2005
right.
or February 2005. So over 30 years. So
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, there was almost complete turnover. There was a new chief of police. I mean, there was a new team of investigators.
They called them the Ghostbusters?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
They had
exactly.
My original guy, the one who believed in my suspect as being a good suspect. Not saying he did it. Don't confuse me when saying a good suspect is the person who did it. Nothing. He was there. Then there was this Ghostbuster thing, and they kind of came in with the guns blazing, and we're going to be cool and all, and it didn't really go anywhere. They brought the FBI in, and then Landwehr came in. I think Landwehr was. When did Landwehr come in?
Don't remember.
Yeah, and I have mixed feelings about Landwehr. I got some statements from him which I know aren't accurate and not truthful, and I don't entirely trust him, which is one reason I have some issues. I don't. I didn't have a great experience when I was there in 2004. That doesn't mean he's not right. you know, you know, there's detectives and investigators I've come to head with, they're fighting with, and it's like sometimes they're perfectly legitimate what they say, just don't get along with them. Other ones, I actually, if you look at the case with the Superbike case, if you go to my show on the Superbike case, the sheriff there, Sheriff Wright, who's always wrong, Sheriff Wright, in my opinion, is a liar. I'll say that straight up. He and his whole team are liars. The prosecutor was a liar, and I have the proof of it, and I put it in the video. So there's some I really will say, hey, that guy's just a liar, and it's fraudulent. The conviction of in the Superbike case was erroneous and was based on falsities, and Todd Kolep is the guy they convicted on that, and they said he knew things nobody else knew, that only the police knew, and that he knew every victim had been shot in the forehead. But in reality, I had all the autopsy reports, and none of them were shot in the forehead. And I worked on that case with the sheriff, and he turned out to be not a credible dude. But Landwehr, I'm not saying that about Landwehr at all. Landwehr could be totally credible. Landwehr could be completely right about. I just had issues with the way he handled certain things. And other people had those same issues with him, so I don't know if it's just a personality thing, communication issue. So he may be totally right about Dennis Rader being BTK from the beginning, and that the Otero DNA really did exist and was properly analyzed and connected. So, again, gotta be, just because I have certain feelings doesn't mean that they're necessarily accurate as far as whether this was a legitimate anything. David says, I think it would be interesting to know whether the count of the Otero murder that Dennis Rader dropped off for the police to pick up was written on a computer or a typewriter. This is one thing that's very important. The letter that was left was an original, and it was on a typewriter, because I don't think I had computers in 1974, right? It was a typewritten. And one of the frustrating things for that was that when they found the mother lode with Dennis Rader, there was nothing physically, letter form or souvenirs that matched the Otero scene or the Bright scene. It all started later. Now that could simply be because, I don't know, maybe he just didn't get into it till later. There were things taken from the Otero scene. I think it was his watch was taken and the keychain. No, that was thrown on the roof. That was thrown on a roof, right?
A watch and a radio.
Oh, the radio, right. So those were not found with Dennis Rader. It doesn't mean he never took them. It just means they weren't found. I mean, it's 30 years, like Corey points out. It's 3 decades, That dude's like, I'm done with this watch, This radio's shit, We don't know why. He had a lot of stuff from the later crimes, the 5 later crimes. He had nothing from the Bright crime or the Otero crime in that mother lode, in his files or in his cabinets or in his possession. So that's why the DNA is so important. There is nothing, zero, linking him to the Bright crime at all. There's just that's actually just a truth. There's 2 possibilities. One is it just, he just didn't leave DNA, but he still did it. And the second possibility is that the Bright crime was never actually part of BTK. That's possible. We don't know. We'll never know. As far as the Otero crimes, it's all about the DNA. Because other than that, there's nothing linking him to the Otero crimes either, except for DNA. So, that's why it's so important to know the DNA is accurate, properly collected, and actually is the real, Otero DNA. And if that's true, he did it. So.
Pat, can I say something in response to David's question? You can always say
something in response.
Thank you.
Sure.
If David is talking about the first BTK communication, which was, I think, October 1974, that I'm not sure if it was a copy or handwritten or what the situation was.
It's not.
You might be right about that.
It's absolutely not a copy.
Okay.
That was one of the issues about it, that it was an original. So you couldn't go to somebody's house and say, "Oh, look." You could, if you could find. I think it was a typewritten. So, is it typewritten? I thought it was typewritten. So you could find their typewriter. You could match it to the letter, but they just never,
Right.
came across
So
whatever it was. But if it had been a copy, then of course he could have had the original, and that was true in other things. But
right, that's what I was getting at. So
Yeah.
if David is talking about
Right.
another letter that was posted it was actually attached to a stop sign,
Right.
and it was a
Right.
several page long
Right.
copy of a letter called
Yeah.
Death on a Cold January Morning.
Right.
And it also is a narrative describing the Otero killings. They did find the original of that at Dennis Rader's house.
That's correct. But a
Yeah, so
description of the killings is not the same thing as the original letter.
no, I'm not even saying that
Yeah.
that proves anything, but
Right. But
it
you're
does
correct.
show you, it does show you that Dennis Rader would have to be sitting there writing a ton of stuff about the Otero killings, which pretty much matches the evidence, even if he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I just find that kind of odd.
Well, the issue about that is you have to understand psychopaths, which is why I lean on heavily on whether we have proof. Just because psychopaths will suck up and say they committed crimes they didn't commit. They'll do it all
Right.
the time. They'll gather enough information over time to say what they have to say. Sometimes also when the police accept that, they'll also let's say 40% of it isn't accurate. They'll just say, well, the rest of it's good because they want to convict the guy. So I have this. I'm a little bit leery always of things like that. Unless they truly know something nobody else could have known or could have gotten that information from some other place. So, everybody thinks everything was so locked down about the Otero crimes, but apparently in the beginning, there was a lot of information that was leaking everywhere. So that's why they never suspected that the original BTK letter, they thought it was fraudulent for decades. They thought it was a phony letter because it wasn't accurate to the crime scene. So they thought somebody who had either knowledge of the crime scene, one of the officers, or somebody had leaked information, that then somebody had written this as a, some kind of joke or fraud, just fun. So I'm not saying that's true. It could have simply been Dennis Rader, But the problem is we don't have proof, and I'm hugely believer in proof. So we can say it seems to be. I'm okay with that. But when we say it's absolute, I want the absolute proof. Just because I think that when we put cases to bed, we ought to be able to say we have undeniable proof, and we can support that with undeniable evidence. And I think if the Otero DNA is accurate, then I'm good with it. This is the guy, right? I don't have a problem with that because I could care less whether it's him or somebody else. You know what I mean? And he's clearly looks like he should be the guy. You know what I'm saying? I don't have an issue with that. But one of the other things about this whole case was that because the Otero, Mrs. Otero, worked for Coleman, and so did Catherine Bright, they really suspected a Coleman employee at the time. They were having, like, Kevin Bright had to stand outside, that's a brother, stand outside of Coleman and watch the people leave to see if he could identify somebody. They were pretty sure it was a Coleman employee, which my suspect was. And he was not. He worked for Coleman at some other point in time in another place, but he was not connected to Coleman at the time. And so because of how these victims were selected, and also that my suspect, also his brother actually worked at the store, Dillon's, where the BTK or the Otero killer, just put Otero killer. Otero killer drove the Otero car to the Dillon shopping center and left it there, and that's when my suspect's brother worked there. He worked there, and his father lived right next door. So there were reasons why my suspect was a good suspect, and that's why the police were looking at him to begin with. Now, it's entirely possible that the Coleman thing is a complete, just coincidence. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people worked for Coleman in Wichita. So that Dennis Rader could give a crap whether they worked for Coleman or not, just happened to select two people that worked for Coleman. Is entirely possible. Not a problem with that. But it's just a point of, I like to, as a profiler, make sure that there is evidence, and I like to see that there's nothing peculiar about the evidence, and how it's presented and how it's supported. So yeah, I mean, he's a don't have a problem with him being the guy. I really don't. What did Carrie say? As for the Otero murders, wasn't there some reference to a stolen toy from the Otero home belonging to one of the surviving children? I don't remember that. Do you remember that, Corey? I don't remember a toy.
I don't remember reading that.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. I remember the radio and watch thing. Then there was.
He talks about at the Shirley Vian killing. He talks about letting the kids play with some toys to keep them distracted, but that's the only thing that comes to mind.
A sick little buzzard, wasn't he? He definitely did Shirley Vian.
Right. By the way, do you know where he took Shirley Vian's car?
No, I'm blanking on that.
Dylan's parking lot.
Did he really? Really?
Yeah.
I do not remember.
Interesting,
that.
Right?
Oh, that is. I did not recall that at all. See, somebody who studies that case. but here again, I'm just going to play devil's advocate because you like to do that with me.
Sure.
So I'm going to do that with you.
Wow.
You have, see, this is the problem. Once you have you have the quote original BTK. Okay, you got the Otero guy who killed the Oteros, drove the car to the Dillon's parking lot. Right. Now, after that, if you were a copycat, wouldn't you think that would be a fun thing to do? So that's where the problem comes in. I've studied enough cases to know that copycats will actually, the reason they're called copycats is because they copycat. They will claim they're the person that they aren't. They'll commit crimes in the same method that the other person did it, and they'll do things to link themselves to those crimes because they're copycats. So that's the problem. And I know that when the police were working on this for years, I mean, they were just overwhelmed with information and so many possibilities. I mean, it's outrageous, how many possibilities you have. I think when Dennis Rader came up and screwed up, oh my God, were they thankful? You know what I mean? It's like, finally, get this crap over with. And I'm okay with that again. I just point out, as far as education goes, not because I'm not out here to prove anything. But this is how, when you're looking at cases, you have to make sure that we talked about this with the McCann case, the Madeleine McCann case, that now they got this suspect, Madeleine McCann, the little girl that was disappeared in Portugal way a long time ago. Now they have a guy in Germany, Christian Bruckner, and they say that the German prosecutor says he's the one that abducted, raped, and murdered Madeleine McCann, the little 4-year-old. Well, he's got no proof. He doesn't. The guy lived in the town. He's a creepo. He's a pedo. He's all kinds of things. You know what I mean? But there's no proof. So the problem is, yeah, he could have done it, but there's no proof that he did do it, along with the fact there's not even any proof of an abduction. So I'm always, when I talk about education and understanding things, I'm not out there to necessarily prove that they're right or wrong, but to point out the issues that we're dealing with, what law enforcement is dealing with, what profiles are dealing with, and what the general public, listening to things coming in, does know and doesn't know, and ends up, either just totally believing something that isn't even true. Like when I talk about the Superbike case, when Todd Kolop was convicted of that, and the police said that he confessed to something only he and the police knew. Everybody believed it, and I'm watching show after show after show, major networks talking about how he did this because he knew something only the killer would know. I sent to all those networks copies of the autopsy report. I said, I worked this case. He's full of it. None of the victims are shot in the forehead. Not one of the 4 victims. Not one of them. And yet he's saying that's how it happened, and the police are agreeing with him. Now there's a problem with this. Do you know how many media outlets reported what I sent them? Now, I sent them the autopsy report. I sent them evidence, and not one would report it. Because everybody was into Todd Kolop confessed to something that only the killer would have known. And so it went down in history. And to this day, most people will believe that because that's what they got from the police and the media. It's not true. And I have the proof. Still doesn't prove anything. Because they don't want to believe it because they heard it from the grapevine, So one of the things I try to do this show is just point out issues that things are not always as they seem, And we should just at least be willing to be open and analyze things. Even myself, I did not know about this this particular information that you found, and I'm open to finding out. Wow, that existed. You know, I'm still curious about it, why it was, all the issues about it, but I'm very glad you brought it to light, and it may indeed be the definitive proof that he's the original BTK. But I still would like to, personally, I just would like the chain of custody laid out a little bit on this one. That's just because I'm still curious, you know what I mean? But again,
Sure.
I don't have any problem with him being the original BTK at all, and I think you've done excellent work. Let me look at one more thing. Oh no, we already did that. So I'm going to let everybody go home, including Corey, who's probably put in a lot of extra effort. So this was fantastic, Corey. Thank you for coming on. And
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely great. Everybody loved you here. So I think it made it for a very interesting show that lets us analyze everything and be aware that, you know, there's more information out there maybe than even I know. So I really do appreciate you coming on. You're fantastic. And I had a great time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm glad my background didn't fall down during the show, which, you know, I'm so thankful for that. So anyway, if you got another case along the way that you can nail me with, you just go ahead and bring it up, and I will always appreciate it. This is Corey Smith again, everybody. Thank you, Corey. I'm going to clap for coming on and being fantastic, and enjoy the rest. What is it, Sunday? Oh, it's I think it's like, isn't it like vacation week for kids and college students and something like that? So I don't know who gets a break, but my granddaughter is off for the week, which is why I'm at the beach. So anyway, thank you again, Corey. And if you haven't subscribed to the show, subscribe, like, and join Patreon. And you know, I have coming up on Tuesday, we're going to have the call-in night, which you can call in with any questions or comments you want to make. And then Thursday we'll have the hangout, and then next Sunday will be the Adam Walsh case, because very interesting. Two great suspects. Which one is it? Do we even know? So thank you again, Corey. You were just fabulous. See you guys later.